Hey, it's TDA and welcome back to episode 2 of this proliferation run. And we have not done any proliferation so far, but obviously we will be working towards that in this episode because we just unlocked it, as you can see by the tutorial. Now, before we do that, I just have to say I am already enjoying this run so much. There's a ton of new things that we can do with proliferation and yeah, looking forward to that. I also forgot to mention a few things in the previous episode because I recorded it 3 times and by the end of that I pretty much did not know anymore what I said or didn't say because I had some sound issues. But I also noted the inputs on the belt, but I also included the number now. So that's something I didn't do in my previous run. But by doing that, you know how much ore per second you would need on that belt to make sure you can fully use it, assuming of course that the demand is actually there as well. But that also means that if it says 6, you should have 2 miners attached to that belt. If it says 3, then you can get away with just 1 miner. That is assuming that you have each miner covering preferably at least 6 veins. You will be upgrading the mining speed along the way, but 6 veins is kind of the sweet spot to aim for. What else did I forget? Yeah, I usually get the question, maybe not in this first episode, but after a few episodes, how are you powering all this stuff? I am low on power. Well, yeah, that is because off screen I built a ton of wind turbines. And specifically in this run, I will be using the polar regions for power because usually I end up not really using them at all. So you might as well fill them with wind turbines. I really hate wind turbines, they're kind of ugly, but yeah, if you just put them on the poles, it's pretty efficient. And we have 2 of them, so there should be plenty of room to have some wind power going. Now, what else? Yeah, the planets. Actually, that is a question I have for you guys. What are we going to name our planets? We have our little starting planet over here, which is the default Mediterranean one. Any suggestions for a name are welcome, and we have a few more planets to cover. So we have a gas giant, which by now we can actually see what it is producing. So apparently we have the kind of default hydrogen and deuterium in this specific gas giant. So yeah, pretty standard. No fire ice this time. Sorry guys. For some reason I always get fire ice, so this is kind of new to me. Yeah, what else do we have? We actually have a lava planet, which is kind of cool because we can use the new building that is providing us with lava power. By the time at least we can get there. This is kind of a nice planet actually because it has a ton of iron and copper ore, so we won't be running out of anything like that anytime soon. It's actually a boatload of titanium as well, and a relatively small amount of silicon, but then we have the last planet in our system, which has 2 million silicon ore, which is not the largest amount in the universe, but it will be more than enough because you don't actually need silicon for that many purposes, at least not until we unlock warp. So, any suggestions for the name are welcome, and let's get to it and let's start building some stuff. Now, what we want to be doing is setting up a few smaller production facilities. We don't need to overdo it, mainly because, of course, I forgot to grab some smelters, but hey, we have them all now, so we can just pick up however many we need. But the reason I kind of want to make sure we don't overproduce those items at this moment is because we will be scaling up our production quite rapidly once we unlock our interstellar flight. So we're actually going to be removing most of these builds simply because they don't make sense at some point in the game anymore in this particular playstyle. Actually, one last thing I didn't mention. The reason I put the wind turbines on this row is because there's a shift in the grid here. I might have mentioned that last time, I'm not sure. But that's an easy way for me to remember, hey, don't build something across these lines because grid lines are quite annoying in that way that you will actually get into some issues then. Now, what are we going to build over here? Let's make sure we are nicely aligned with our other miners. Smelters, I mean. Let's see, is this aligned? And this is where you can see that the alignment is kind of annoying because now the alignment doesn't make sense. Boo-hoo. Yeah, so how are we going to fix that? We move back a little bit. Close enough. We are going to leave 1 more space in between and 3 of those, and then we are going to put in 1 more line like that. And that, So that should work quite nicely. And then we are going to put in another line like this. And yeah, do we want to do it like this? Actually, I think we can do it slightly different. So hold on, I changed my mind. Sorry, guys. We're actually going to make it a little more neat. We are going to be putting this one over here. Then we are going to take 2 spaces. Then we're going to put it not there, not there, not there, not there. Like this. And then we are going to put in 1, 2 spaces and do this like this. Now, what are we going to do over here? We are going to make the slowest build ever. We are going to make some silicon ore, which we can make from stone. So you can actually make silicon on your starting planet. It is just excruciatingly slow. You produce 1 for 10 stone, which is quite expensive, but then again, we have tons of stone, as you can see. Actually, this is actually a relatively small vein, but it's 600k, so you're not going to run out of stone anytime soon. But it's just really, really slow. And what are we going to build over here? We are going to build some glass over here. And you could debate whether or not you want to reproduce that or siphon off the glass over here, because as you can see, this is not really doing anything. But I'm going to do it like that. Now, why are we building this? Well, we are going to be building a little bit of silicon. And let's make sure we leave some room in between so we can have some proliferation going on. Let's just center that. Why not? Why not? Something like this. And this is going to be making... Where's the belt going to be? On this line. So we should be aligning it like this. This, yes. And then we are going to leave another few spaces. And then over here we are going to have another thing. This is going to be producing prisms. And as you can see, we need 3 glass in order to make 2 prisms every 2 seconds. And then we are going to make use of the prisms to make plasma exciters. Now, the 2 per second is actually enough to make 1 every 2 seconds in terms of plasma exciters, but we also need some magnetic coils. And for that, I am actually going to siphon off the magnetic coils over here, because as you can see, a lot of the production over here, basically the only things we're actively using are the steel and the stone. And yes, it is stone. So someone pointed out in the comments last time, not concrete. Not sure why I made that up. But anyway, stone, and the stone and steel is being used mostly in the foundation. So what you could actually do, if you want, you could argue that it is not the worst thing in the world to do this. And then add 6 smelters for stone over here. Why is this so wonky? Really? Really? This is just ugly. There we go. And yes, it helps to place an extra belt, and if you want this nicely aligned, and then you remove this and it stays like this. So if you have wonky belts, this is the solution. Now, by doing this, we kind of messed up our perfect ratios, but considering the glass is barely being used in our mall, yeah, if you want to stick to the perfect ratios perfectly, don't do this. If you want to be efficient and optimal, I do suggest that you probably add in these 3 smelters. The reason being that it really speeds up your foundation production, and who doesn't like foundations? Okay, so actually this should not be a assembler, this should be a smelter, because what are we smelting over here? We are going to be smelting silicon. And as you can see, you need 2 silicon ore to make 1 silicon bar every 2 seconds. And even though we have a boatload of these, we are only going to be producing 12 times 0.1 silicon ore per second, so that's 1.2. So we can actually put in 2 smelters, but we're only going to be using half of the second one. But yeah, then again, you gotta do what you gotta do. Now, let's see, what else? I am actually going to move this a little bit over here, because this is the area where we want to proliferate, and I'm hoping to keep this kind of neat, but that does mean that we need to space some stuff out right now. And don't worry, we're going to take all these builds down at some point, but yeah. And we are going to put in a little assembler over here as well for the components. Microcrystalline components to be exact. Those need silicon, and those need some copper ore, which we will siphon off from down here. Now, why are we doing all of this? Well, obviously we want to be producing some spray coaters, I think they're called. Spray coaters? Yes, spray coaters. And we are going to need a ton of items to do that. So we are going to need steel, we are going to need the circuit boards, which we already have. And then of course we do need the exciters and the components to do so. And that is where these two come in. Now, the real question is, where do we place that? Because we have the stuff over here, so it's kind of inconvenient. I'm just going to be pragmatic about this and place this probably over here. Yeah, why not? A little box and a sorter. Now, this will be a spray coater facility, and now I just need to put in a lot of belts and some sorters, and I will not have you sit through that, so be right back. Alright, and it is all up and running. It is a little bit of spaghetti, to be honest, but if you zoom out a bit, I think this is acceptable spaghetti, mostly because we either make a giant build only to make spray coaters, which is really overkill, or we do it like this. We use the materials that we have sitting on this belt anyway, and as you can see, even though we're siphoning it off, it's barely noticeable. And I like it, the fact that it's all nicely perpendicular to each other, so yeah, I think it's an acceptable level of spaghetti, at least for this point of the game. We will be replacing some of these builds with more organized, more powerful builds later on. But for now, this works. And it's actually surprisingly fast. So even though the speed of this silicon production is excruciatingly slow, you will be surprised how long it takes to get like 5 or 10 of these spray coaters. It's really not that long. And that's pretty much all you need, especially at this point of the game. So it's really dangerous to start overproducing. Well, not dangerous maybe, but it's really not pointful to start to do that. So anyway, the spray coaters by themselves are not that useful, because of course we need to proliferate stuff. And we are going to do that like this. I made a tiny little build for that, and let's do some math. I know you like math. So, Proliferators Mark 1 are made from coal. Very simple, and they're made really fast. It's only 1.5 seconds to make one. So actually, if you have a full belt of coal, that gives you 6 per second. Then with 3 assemblers, you are able to make 6 proliferators per second, which is a full belt. Now, how much is a full belt? Well, one proliferator is able to spray 12 times. So if you have 1 per second on your belt, that is enough to spray 2 full belts of stuff going underneath it, because that is 1 per second going in with 12 sprays. So and you have belts with, of course, 6 per second, at least at this point in the game. So you can spray a ton, or 12 belts to be exact, with just 1 little belt of proliferator. So you don't need that many. That said, we have a lot of places where we can use this. And I actually don't love the location where we put this, so I'm gonna relocate it, and then we're gonna have to talk a little bit on where to use them and how to use them. Okay, there we go. It is all up and running, and let's see what it does. So we're getting 6 per second on this belt, at least assuming that we have everything powered up. This is not quite 6 per second, so why not? Oh, that has everything to do with the inputs, so I'll fix that. But anyway, as you can see, they go through this spray coater, which initially does exactly nothing, but they turn around, they go through on the top. This is where you put in the proliferators, and then the first batch that comes through is actually being sprayed upon. So you can see right now that even the very first item that went through is already sprayed. And you can tell that by the fact that there's this triangle on the side. It's only one triangle, marking the fact that this is a Mark 1 buffed proliferator. So a Mark 1 proliferated proliferator. Fun thing to say. Now, what is this splitter doing here? And by the way, in case you didn't know, because a lot of players missed this initially, if you place a splitter and you press tab, you can have different configurations. So you actually have 3 modes. You have this one with a ground level belt and a first level belt on the sides. You have this basically 4-way splitter over here that does that. And then you have the first level and second level that are aligned to each other, which is the one I used over here. And if you have multiple belts going in and out, you can set priority. So for example, if I set a filter, only the stuff I set the filter on will be able to go through. It's pointless right now, but of course, if you have multiple items coming in, that is how you use them. And you can also set an input priority. So if you have multiple belts with the same stuff going on in, you can let the splitter know which belt should be put in first. And then if there's additional room left to process, it will also have any secondary belts coming in as well. And let's disable that because right now this doesn't make sense. Now, why the splitter over there? Well, it's the fact that in order to use proliferators, as you can see, we need to be at the first level. So I decided why not just have the proliferators at a first level belt all the time. That helps us kind of avoid having to fiddle around with that a lot. And it also allows us to do some very cool stuff, like, for example, something like this. Let me see, where should we put it? Something like this. 1, 2, 3. Okay, this is really annoying me, so let's move on back. 1, 2, 3. And one on this one, and one on this one, and one on this one. And of course, we do need to make sure it is actually powered up. I'm not going to make a blueprint for these builds because it's really annoying, and if you did it slightly different on your own playthrough, your belts might be running different, but I think you get the point, and it's not really that intensive to do it. So, you can actually stack proliferators as well, which apparently I did. Let's not do that, because of course it needs to be on this belt. There we go. And the nice thing about the fact that it's already at first level, and you need to press the up key. And here you can see the annoying little part about the jumps. Now, if you find this ugly, what you can do, because we have this little curve because of the way the grid shifts, you press R twice, you get a diagonal line. So you can move belts in whatever diagonal line you want. And of course, it will still snap to the grid in the location you place it. So this looks like a very straight line, even though it is actually slightly curved. Now, very smart me placed a power pole right in the wrong place. So, and there we go, there we go. Same thing over here. Oh, it's still not working. They actually already improved the way this proliferated belt snaps. As you can see, there's a slight curve in the belt here as well. Let's pretend that's not there because I can't actually do anything about it. And let's place some power towers like this. Now, this will cause, and it will take a while because this reservoir is filling up, but as soon as it is filled up, we should have no problem spraying everything that goes through here from this point onwards. This will make sure that all these inputs are being proliferated, and that means that all the buildings are being made by proliferated items, and then it depends on what you want to do. Now, there's two settings that you can use. You can, by default, the setting is set at extra products. Free stuff, basically. Right now, with Mark 1 proliferators, we get a 12.5% bonus for extra products. So that means that for every 8 items that you produce, you get 1 for free. Doesn't sound like a lot, and to be honest, it isn't. But if you think about it, for example, foundations, we've produced thousands of them already. So 12% more of 1,000 is 1,250. Well, not 1,200, 225, sorry. 125? Jeez, I suck at math. I shouldn't be doing math this late in the evening. Anyway, and that's me being an actuary. Oh, geez. Anyway, you get a lot of free stuff. That was my point. And especially for more expensive buildings, like, for example, this, there's a lot of materials going in. Of course, you do need to proliferate all of them, but getting 1 for free is actually a big deal. It saves you a lot of resources. Anyway, that's one setting. What you could also do, alternatively, is set it to production speed up. Now, the nice thing about that is that this actually buffs your production by a lot more than 12.5%. Again, let's look at the recipe. It's a 25% production speed up. So basically, you're producing every building at 25% additional speed. So especially for large quantity items like belts, for example, it might be useful to set it at this setting rather than the free stuff one, but at the same time, you might as well take the free stuff one. It really depends on your preference. In my blueprint, it is set by default at extra products because I know people like their free stuff. But if you rather want to have the buffed version, then by all means do that. And as you can see, it is now receiving buffed inputs. And you see this little blue line over here. This is the free item being produced. So as long as we keep supplying this with proliferated items, then it will actually start buffing that. Yeah, so buffed stuff. And as you can see, we are barely using any glass, so it will take a while for everything actually to be proliferated. Even though the in-game guide kind of suggests something different, you don't actually need to proliferate every single input for a building, but it will cause the additional products to speed up slower. Ideally, to be honest, you use the additional production speed if you want to be really effective. Why? Because 12.5% is not just the only thing it does, it also costs a energy consumption of plus 30%. So you're speeding up your production either by 12.5% or 25%, with either free stuff or not free stuff, with just faster production. But you do so at a cost of 30% additional energy consumption. Now, 25% speed up plus 30% energy, that's almost neutral. Not quite, but close enough. So that's actually quite a nice bonus. Anyway, if you only use proliferators at one spot, I suggest you make it this spot. But I am going to go a little further and show you, if you want to take it to the next level, how you should do that. I hear you like proliferation. Well, we've got proliferation and we have it all over the place. We now have not just our mall proliferated. By the way, I moved it a little bit, mainly because I want to leave some room here to expand that. But we now also have proliferation in pretty much every area of our starting base. We have set the production type to extra units. Or everywhere you can put it to extra speed. But as you can see, because we are mainly producing buildings at the moment, our speed is nearly 0. Because we are not producing science, we are not producing buildings, or at least we're producing foundations basically, but every other building we have in stock. And that is the case with a lot of this part of the game, where you don't want to overbuild production facilities if you're not actually going to use them, which is kind of the whole point of this series. However, we are using our production every now and then, and if we do, we are now getting a tiny little 12.5% bonus on all the stuff we're doing. So pretty great, isn't it? And we can easily upgrade that later on, now having put in place the infrastructure for that. So yeah, quite straightforward. Once again, remember that you don't necessarily need to do that. You actually need to fiddle around a little bit with things like sorters. These things are pretty big and they tend to clip your sorters, and if you also want to put in the belt and you want to have a straight line, yeah, you might need to move around some of the sorters, which apparently I underestimated how big these units were going to be. So, something to keep in mind for next builds. Once again, at this point in the game, you don't necessarily need to do that, but hey, I like new toys and I like playing with my new toys, so proliferation being the new toy, of course, in this example, is a really fun stuff to work around with. Now, another little finicky thing that you need to be aware of, I wanted to kind of keep this at a first level belt raised thingy, but splitters don't really work at the first level, and you can stack splitters like this. Let me show you. You can stack splitters, but they will actually raise them so high they are way above the first level of the belt. So you would actually need to raise them even further, and then you get into issues with the spray coater, etc. So long story short, the belts kind of go up and down. You can smartly use this, so you can have the belt going through on the ground floor, and then you can have the upper belt split off very easily by using a cross splitter like this. I think this looks kind of neat, but if you have belts on the same line that also need to be proliferated, then yeah, you end up doing something like this, which is, I don't know, I think it looks okay. I would just have preferred it if there was a solution to keep them at the same level and still split them off in multiple directions. So if I missed an obvious solution there, let me know. But for now, this will have to do. All right. That concludes our proliferation setup for today. We yeah, we built our little spray coaters, we built our proliferation units, and we hooked everything up. Now, in the next episode, we will focus a little bit on progressing our game. We are probably going to expand our mall a little bit, and we want our red science up and running as soon as possible, because even though we now have quite a nice supply of silicon, I actually am pleasantly surprised with how fast this works. I mean, obviously it's not working fast, I'm not sure that's the correct word, but yeah, give it some time and it fills up, so yeah, pretty decent. But we need titanium as well, and of course we have a little bit of titanium ore, but that's not really noteworthy, so we are going to get some from one of our other planets. Now, once again, if you have suggestions for the names of the planets, let me know in the comments. Best suggestion wins, so by all means go for it, and I will catch you in the next one.